Okay, everyone. So we're gonna do just a review on perspective drawing. So those of you who want to draw city, a city in the background, but you want to draw it more accurately, there's a few things you can do. Okay, so just a review, 1 point perspective means there's one vanishing point. If I were to draw a line across this, this is our horizon line. If I were to draw a square, then every single, like this corner and this corner are the only two corners that could go to this vanishing point. And really you should use your ruler to get really nice straight lines. To finish this off as a cube, whatever this line is doing, we want to create a parallel line to it. So these two lines copy each other, right? If I were to turn this into a building, then anything on this side, if I want to draw windows, they would just stay square. If I wanted to draw a door, they'd stay square. On this side, however, if I want to draw windows, then I need to draw a line, and the top and bottom of that needs to go to the vanishing point, and then I can draw my lines. And my lines should get closer together as they get closer to the end, because everything gets smaller as it gets to this vanishing point. If I want to draw a door, then I start with my line and I draw that to my vanishing point and bring that line down. Okay. If I have a box, well, not there. If I have a box here, because it's towards the side, I can draw to these 3 points. So this line would go to here, this line would go here, this line would go there. And same thing, whatever the edge is doing, I want to parallel that, mimic that. Whatever this line is doing, I want to parallel and mimic that. Okay. 2-point perspective is slightly different. So this is 1 point. So I'm just going to divide the paper just here so we have a top portion. Let me zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to break this up into a small box. So this essentially is like the side would be the proportions of our paper that we draw our character in. So we have a few options. 1 point perspective, we can put a vanishing point somewhere into the artwork in the center, and everything that we draw gets drawn to that point. So if I were drawing, and I should be using a ruler for this, but I want to kind of move quickly. So if I'm drawing like the top of a building here, okay, let me scoot this over. We're just focusing in on this one. So let's say I want to draw the top of a building here. I would draw the flat side of the building, and then I would draw from this corner to my vanishing point, and then this corner, if this was the edge of my building. If not, let's say my edge was like further out here, then I can draw it to that point. And it's okay if like the edge of your building or whatever goes off your page to fit your vanishing point. So everything's moving towards this point. Then I would bring another line up. And then I would bring some lines down where those corners meet. And where I want that to end, I would line up the dot to the bottom of that line to create like the inside edge. Draw this line across, and then where these two lines meet, line up that to my vanishing point and draw my line out. And that would give me that inside lip of the top of my roof. Then I can always add like another building. Let's say it's across the street. And again, you should be using your rulers for this, but sometimes the ruler just takes too long for the demos. So I'm going to erase this part. So with 1-point perspective, we're always starting with a flat shape, either a rectangle, a square, especially if we're drawing like buildings. I can do another building here. And you just want to be careful. The closer you get to the vanishing point, the more distorted the buildings are going to look. So this might be a little too close, and I'll show you how I'm going to fix that so that it's not going to look too weird. So if these are my next two buildings, I'm going to do the same thing. Line up the corner to my vanishing point. Line up that top corner to my vanishing point. And I usually draw this line in dashed lines so that it's easier to know what I'm going to erase. And then this building, whatever that line's doing, I'm going to bring that line straight down. And then on this side, I might just make it a little bit skinnier so it's not so distorted. I don't want to make this building so wide, otherwise it's not going to look right. And then I'd erase these lines. And I could, you know, keep going, but the point of it is that everything should get smaller as it's getting closer to here. And that'll help kind of give you a little bit more of a realistic 3D approach with your buildings. Another option, so let me leave that on screen for a moment. Sorry, while we're here, any windows would be drawn normally on this side. So they'd be normal squares. Any windows on this side, it'll be easier if I draw it on this one. I would start with just my line, going straight down, and then the top and bottom of every line would go to that vanishing point. And then I would just go in and I would draw like my lines for my windows. Okay, and a window on this side would just be a regular square. Now, the fun thing about 1-point perspective, draw a new rectangle here. If I have my vanishing point in the center, I can start with a bunch of boxes. And again, these should probably be, I should really be drawing these with my ruler, but I can start with a bunch of boxes, and what I can do is I can turn this into a view of us looking down into the city. So we're looking at the tops of the buildings, and so all of these edges and then let's say my boxes go, I'm gonna make some of these boxes go outside. This way I can get the outer edge. Make sure all your lines are lining up to your vanishing point. Oops. Or you end up with a line like that. So this line, because this building's in the way, I'm going to stop at that line because I don't want to draw through the buildings. Right? These buildings are solid. So this little building back here. And there I have a city looking down. And to really help this, I can draw all my windows. And I can either, because it's so small, I can either just do lines straight across. I could draw a few lines from the vanishing point going out. And this you should be using a ruler for, but doing some really light lines, it gives us the illusion of the windows and making it look more like a cityscape. So you could do something like this for your background, for your hero or villain drawing. And then just for a standard review, you could have your vanishing point to the side over here and have everything, or to the other side. It doesn't have to be in the center. Just know that every building I draw, I need to start with my shapes. And some of these lines I'll erase, like this building's going to be in front of this one. So, and everything should be, everything will end up on this horizon line, because that'll be the ground, right? And then each building I can draw the front of it. And I can either keep it really skinny, or I can make them fat and overlap each other, which means I'd have to erase this line. But everything would go to that vanishing point, right? And so I could have a city this way and then have maybe my hero's head in view of the city there, right? So this is just one of the ways to create your background using perspective. I would, if you're going to use a city, I would try to find a photo of a city that you would like to incorporate in the background. It's always easier to draw from pictures. And again, this is 1 point perspective. And that's, perspective. And that's because there's only one vanishing point that everything is going to. 2 point perspective has 2 vanishing points. So I'm gonna draw a line across my paper, and I'm going to put my vanishing points at the edge of my paper. Really, your vanishing points shouldn't be this big, but I want them big enough so you can see them on the video. In 2-point perspective, we don't start with the shape. We start with a straight line. So it's kind of like you're looking at the corner of the building instead of this side. So it's kind of like, I take this book. So 1-point perspective is like this, right? I see a flat side and a top. Or maybe like this, where I see a flat side and a little bit of the side and a little bit of the top. 2-point perspective, it's like we're looking directly at the corner and we see both sides. And if you can see this, the edges kind of get smaller here. Edges kind of get smaller here. 2-point like this, we can see 3 sides. So this is kind of like our cubes that we've been drawing, right? Or like this, looking at it from the underneath view. So 2-point is like you're looking at the corner of the object, where 1-point, it's like we're looking at the flat side. Okay. And so with 2-point, you start with your corner, and this could be a building. It could be really tall if you want it to be. And then the top and bottom of this line is going to go to the vanishing point. Top and bottom of this is going to go to that vanishing point. And then to finish this off, whatever this line's doing, you're going to bring that line down. Whatever that line's doing, you're going to copy that. And so this is the same thing as the 1-point perspective, in that whatever I draw on this side is going to go to that vanishing point. Whatever I draw on that side is going to go to that vanishing point. So if I wanted to draw a bunch of rows of windows, I start with my lines and then I draw to my vanishing point. So all these lines would go to my vanishing point here. Let me fix some of these. Let me fix that one, because that one's going the wrong direction. So if you notice, like the lines are going up and then they kind of go straight and then they start to angle down. So that's what we should see in a 2-point perspective, or even a 1-point perspective drawing. Any lines that are, it's kind of like a fan, right? Coming from this point. And then from here I could put in all of my lines for my windows. And if I want to do the same, I can do the same thing on the other side. If I wanted to add another building, I start with another corner, and the corner should start on this line because this is kind of like the sidewalk line. So bring up my next line. If I want my buildings the same height, they're going to stay along the same line here because its building should get smaller, but what this means is this is really the same height as this corner here. Once I have that line, I'm going to erase just the top of this one because that gets confusing. So the top of this one's going to go to this vanishing point. And I'm going to use a ruler because it's too far for me to draw, and I don't want to draw across my other building. So I'm going to line up that corner to this vanishing point and bring it down. And then I need to do the same for the bottom of our building. And this is kind of the area where beginning students always forget, even myself, I forget sometimes that bottom one, but that'll help us show that there's like an alleyway between these two buildings, that there's a separation, right? That's one building, alleyway, and then my other building. And then I can bring down my line. And then I have my second building. I could always make this building taller than that one. Just know anytime you get closer to the vanishing point, you don't really want your buildings getting taller and taller because it gets distorted as you get closer to either of your vanishing points. So really, in this scenario, your buildings should be bigger in the center, and then they get smaller as they get closer to that. And that's just a rough, like, 2-point perspective, just kind of snapshot of 2-point perspective, just because we haven't covered it. But just in case people want to include cityscapes in the back of their hero or villain drawing, I wanted you to have these as some guidelines. I'll include some perspective handouts to kind of help you further along, and if you have questions, please, please, please ask me questions.